All right, I think we're going to get going here. So welcome everyone to the first of a few sessions on Introductory to Starry Night. Steve and I will be kind of going back and forth during the sessions that we do this. And it's designed to, just like it says, be an introductory session, series of sessions on getting you used to the layout of Starry Night, how it works, things, kind of the high level things that you might want to be doing, some details here and there, but just for the most part, getting you used to, using the software, what it can do, and hopefully get you to the point where you're ready to kind of, go off on your own and make some simple shows and get into more detailed aspects of it. So I think some of you have been in your domes. Some of you I know are waiting on your domes to be finished, or the dome is done and you haven't been really able to get in there yet. So this is going to be kind of a fairly straightforward path through Starry Night to get you used to it. And like Mike said earlier, you are by all means welcome to jump to another session if we're moving along and you're like, they're moving way too slowly for me. I'm bored. Go ahead and jump into Beyond the Basics with Mike. And then if you get in there, or if you jump to Dave and Scott, and you're like, whoa, this is way too fast, you're welcome to come back. So, if we see you come and go, it doesn't mean a thing. So to begin with, I'm going to switch over and start sharing my screen here. So if you don't have Starry Night in your preview suite launched yet, then go ahead and do so. And so everybody should have a launch preview suite icon. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that. And if you have any, issues launching stuff or whatnot, Steve is over there. You can ask him or raise your hand. All the tech stuff that Mike went over earlier. All right, so are people having Starry Night launch here? Everyone good? Eventually mine will launch up. Guess I could show you my render box, which has launched successfully. So once Starry Night launches, you should have what we call the pre-flight arrangement. There we go. It finally woke up. Yeah. So ATM4 will launch once Starry Night has launched. We're not going to be getting into this. It's the automation software, if you're not familiar with that. We'll be getting into that, I think some tomorrow and more Wednesday. So I'm just going to go ahead and close out of that for now. And so what you should see are essentially two versions of Starry Night here. We have what we call kind of the user interface. This is on your dome, what you're going to be interacting with on the monitor. So you have your control console in your planetarium, and what we have here is the control interface for Starry Night. So I have all the different controls. I have a little preview window down here. And then what you also have is the render box little preview screen that we have. So typically this would be your dome. So you see coming out of your projectors. On the preview suite version, what we've done is made both of them run at the same time, but the render box view, you can actually move around. If you have multiple screens like I do, you can actually move it off to another screen so that it's not in the way of pre-flight here. So you kind of park it wherever you want, and that's your ability to see, okay, if this was up on the dome, how would it look like there? So I'm going to move it off to the side here for now. And in fact, I think what I'll do for the most part is switch what I'm sharing so that I'm only sharing pre-flight there. So that anything that pops up on my computer, you hopefully won't see. So does everyone have something that looks generally like this on their screen? If not, raise your hand or ask in the chat window. So first thing that we're going to go through is just kind of an overview of what you're seeing, what all the main components are before we actually get into using them. So we'll kind of start from the top and work our way down. So what you should see at the very top, we have the file menu, which everything has. We have a series of buttons. This is the button toolbar, and as we're going through, if there's a button that's up there that lets you do something easily and quickly, I will point it out. Like there's a button to turn the horizon on and off, to look south or north if you want to. So when we get to those, if there's a button, we'll let you know. Right below that are a couple of pieces of very useful information. We have two what we call status bars, all right? And if you take a look, a lot of the information that you see up there is duplicated, like July 20th, 2020, Philadelphia. What you're seeing there is Starry Night telling you what the status is for pre-flight and for render box. And the top buttons, if you don't have the top buttons, good question. If you go to View, Show Button Bar. If you don't have the button bar, it'll say Show Button Bar. If you do have it, it will say Hide. So that's if you want to bring the button bar, or hide it or show it. So the status bars here are telling you what's going on both of your versions of Starry Night. So the top one here is telling you what's going on your RenderBox machine, typically your dome. In this case, your other Starry Night window that doesn't have any buttons or any controls on it. So that's telling you, where are you in that view? What's the dates? Is time running? Some useful pieces of information like that. The bottom one is telling you the current status of pre-flight. So the control version of Starry Night. So if they're talking back and forth and they're in sync, then what you should see is that this information is pretty closely tied together. If there, time's flowing very quickly or something, you're flying around, there might be a little bit of a delay. But if they're synced up, then this information should be pretty much the same. To sync them up, we have a button in the top left here that currently says off. It probably says off on everyone's Starry Night as well. If I hover over that, it says connect, disconnect from dome. Basically, this is your, do I want my two versions synced up or not? So if I click on the off button, it turns live, and that's telling me now anything that I do in Starry Night pre-flight here, the control interface, it's also going to duplicate over on RenderBox. So if I move the screen around, something like that, then what I can see is that my RenderBox view is rotating the same way. On the other hand, if I turn that button off and I move my pre-flight around, I know you guys can't see this, but if you're following along, my RenderBox view is staying parked exactly where it was, right? So by default on your side-dome systems and your planetariums, it actually boots up so that they're in sync, they're live. And so as soon as you start doing stuff on the pre-flight side, you should see it happen up on the dome. There are some cases where you might want to go out of live mode. How do we show the second row? If you're having issues, like some of the things aren't drawing properly, try maximizing the pre-flight interface. I've noticed that there are some cases the laptop has trouble displaying everything unless pre-flight is in full screen mode. So go ahead and try that out and see if that brings everything up for you. If not, then they're not communicating, and we'll have to get someone helping you on the tech side of things with that a little bit later. All right. So that's the live button there. Right below the live button, home, that is your essentially your reset button. So clicking on that will take you to whatever you set your home location to be. I set mine to be Philadelphia here. It will reset the date and the time. Anything that you've done, if you say you've turned constellations on, or you did have coordinate systems up, anything like that, everything gets reset to your default values. So it's a great way to kind of come back home, reset everything. It's a panic button. If you really get far off in the weeds, things are going crazy, you have no idea what's going on, you can always hit home, come back to a spot where you know what's going on, and then start over and go from there. So it's a very, very useful button there. And that also has a button in the button bar, the little house one, that does the same thing as home. So moving across here, we have the time and date that are right up here. And you notice when I hover over the top here, the render box status bar, I can click, but nothing happens. It's purely a status update. Down here with pre-flight, if I click, you notice that they turn orange, and I can actually interact with these values. So anytime that you're wanting to, say, change the date or change your location, any of the things up here in the status bar, you're always going to be doing that on the pre-flight side of things. And then pre-flight will send that information over to the dome, and you'll see it happen on the dome or in your render box preview window off to the side. So we have the time and the date. Next to the time and date, we have the time flow options, so your rate of time. So I have time flowing right now. 1 second, 1x is 1 second. So we can watch the time pass very slowly if we want to. So, and we'll talk about how to speed that up and some of that stuff a little bit later. Next to the time rate, we have our location bar. So this is how we're going to be able to move around to different areas on the Earth or fly out into space. This is how we can move around in Starry Night. Off to the side, just the last couple of things. The 191 by 191, this is giving you your field of view for Starry Night. So by default, it actually gives you a little bit more than 180 degrees. And so that's because we want you to be able to have some kind of horizon image showing on the dome as well. But we still want that to restrict you being able to see the entire night sky, the full 180. So if you see this 191 and you're like, well, shouldn't I be able to see just 180 degrees of the sky? That's what's going on. So this is kind of your field of view, and the plus or minus there, that's how you can adjust that if you want to zoom in on a certain area of the sky or something. The rest of your screen may look a little bit different than mine. I've gone ahead and set mine up. It's kind of the default mode. It doesn't matter. You can have yours arranged however you want, but for what we're going to be doing today and tomorrow, the sessions, you want to at least have what these windows are displaying open somewhere on your screen. So the first one I have up here is called Favorites. If I wanted to change it, I would just click on the little hamburger icon to the left of Favorites there, and then you can kind of click through and change what you want in that window there. If you double click, then you get the advanced find, which I did. Let a couple more people in the room here. So it's the favorites window. Options. So favorites are basically your scenes. You'll be able to save scenes in Starry Night. Options essentially are anything that you're seeing going on the dome. So the horizon panorama, constellations, planets and stars, anything like that, that's going to be under the viewing options here, display options. Starval controls, we'll spend a little bit of time going over that, but not a whole lot. They're becoming less and less used as we go on. These are basically duplicating the controls of an old mechanical system. So you have your daily motion, your latitude motion, stuff like that. And then the final one up here it says planets, and this is where we're able to interact with. Are people able to still see my screen here? So someone said I'm not able to see anything I'm doing. Yay, nay? People see pre-flight, people don't see pre-flight yet? Okay.
Yep,
All
I
right,
see
just
it.
checking. So yeah, planets over here, this is where we're able to interact with individual objects. So, we can mess around with how the constellations look over in options, but if you want to, interact with individual constellations, now we're over here in this window. And then below all that, as I mentioned previously, we have our little preview screen. This is much more useful when you're actually in your planetarium. If you don't want your projectors on, you just want to be programming in front of your console, this gives you an idea of what your dome will look like as it's displayed without running, lamp hours or laser hours on your projectors. So that's just a very brief overview of kind of the interface. We'll be touching on all these different aspects in more detail going forward. But before we break off, we'll have a little bit of an exercise session here that Steve will lead you in. But what we kind of like to say is that Starry Night essentially does like 5 basic functions. And everything that you might do in Starry Night can kind of fall into one of those functions. We have our location, our where. We have the time, the time and date. We have the time rate or time flow. We have the display options. And then the fifth and final one is what we call orientation. And that's related to how you fly around, when you're moving around in space. So we usually leave that one towards the very end of the intro, and sometimes we don't even get to it because you can do, a lot of things in Starry Night without having to worry about the orientation. So what I might recommend, if we don't get to that in the intro classes here, take a look at the Beyond the Basics or even the more advanced course, the YouTube streams later to get a sense of the orientation there. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, and I'm going to turn things over to Steve, who's going to take you guys through our first of several exercises.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to share a file. Brad, they don't have those files, do they, or do they?
Good point, Steve. So the files, the course notes are linked on the schedule page. So in the very last of the tabs, the resource tabs on the schedule, it actually has the link to the course notes. In the course notes, you're going to want to find the folder that says Steve, and in there should be a folder called, Steve linked gave you the exercise in the chat window as well. But in the Steve folder should be the intro exercises, and those are the exercises that we're going to step through. They're all PDFs, so if you want to kind of open those and take a look, those are the exercises Steve is going to lead you in.
So what I've done and what I'll do with each one as we go, I'll link them in the chat. So I don't know if that will help, but if you want to try and download them all, I'm sure that's a lot easier to have them on your computer. So this exercise, I'm just gonna, let me share my screen. This exercise is pretty simple. But what I'm trying to do is get you all acquainted with the way that the program is set up and where things live. Sorry, my computer has 8,000 things open on it right now. There we go. All right. So you should see something like this, main interface elements. And I want you just to go through, and I have a number on top of every single one of the different elements, and just match the numbers up with their elements so that when Brad and I say go to the favorites, you know where the favorites are. I'm going to give you guys a couple minutes to work through it, and then I'll go through it with you. Leave that open. And if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand or ask a question. All right, I just wanted to check. Anybody else need more time? If you do, click on the yes. If you need more time over here, I'd be happy to give you some more time. Or if you're all right with me going through it, I'll walk us through it. All right, I don't see any red flags. So I'm going to change over to my Starry Night, share that. Everybody see my pre-flight? Awesome. All right, I'm just going to walk through. Let me get that other one set up so I can see it. All right. Time and date control. I normally do this by asking everybody where things are, but I kind of feel like if I were to ask right now and I get a whole bunch of voices, I wouldn't be able to hear anybody. So I'm just going to walk through it. Time and date control would be up here. And I would have that as my number 4. Oh, sorry, 7. The preview screen, hopefully that one was pretty obvious. That's number 10. Our viewing location would be up at number 1. Our cursor tool selector, that's right here. Our cursor tool selector would be number 2. Planets, the find pane. I always call that the find pane because in the old days it was called the find pane. Now it's labeled as planets. That's over here. That would be your number 6. Time flow rate. That is right here. This controls how your time flow is going to move. And that's going to be a number 4. View options pane, probably one of the most important, if not the most important thing you pick up on today. View options pane right here. Your view option pane is number 5. Zoom control. I like this one a lot too. I threw it in there just because it's important sometimes to see it. Your zoom control is over here and that helps you zoom in and out. And that is your number 3. Your home or your panic button. Okay, maybe that is the most important one because when you mess up, you can always hit your home button. I always hit this one. Remember, there are 2 different home buttons. And that home button is number 9. And finally, the favorites pane. Your favorites pane lives over here, depending on where you put it, but mine's right here. And that would be a number 8. So hopefully when we say these words like options or favorites, remember sometimes we can call planets find pane. Hopefully that gives you an idea of where they exist. All right, I'm going to stop sharing. Back over to you, Brad.
All right, so hopefully that wasn't too hard. And at this point, we're going to start diving into some of the details here. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen here. All right, so first thing we're going to take a look at here in Starry Night is the location, changing our location. So as we just reviewed, the location is right up here. Mine says Philadelphia. Yours says whatever you put in during the installation part of Starry Night. So if we want to change where we are, a couple options. You can either click right on Philadelphia or whatever your place name is, or the little hamburger icon off to the side there. Both will bring up the same menu. And I want to view from somewhere other than where I'm at now. So I'm going to say view from, and that's going to pop up a window that gives me a whole bunch of options for changing my location. So, if I want to, I can scroll through and individually try and find certain places on the Earth. This is just I don't know, 1,000 or so locations on Earth that, for some reason or another, Simulation Curriculum, which is the company that created the desktop version of this, and then we partnered with them to make the dome version of Starry Night, decided was important enough to include in the list. These are major cities, landmarks, and some not so major cities. So if you want, you can just start typing in the search window here. If I go, hey, what about Stonehenge? I actually get a few different options, couple options for Stonehenge. I'm just going to pick the first one here and say, hey, let's view from the selected location. And my computer now, my pre-flight is launching me and taking me to Stonehenge. And I'll bring my render box view back in here, and you can see that render box also is traveling. So because I'm in live mode, as soon as I said, hey, let's go to Stonehenge, they both started traveling there. So depending on how powerful your computer is, this might be more or less smooth during your flight there. On your Sitem system, don't worry, yeah, it'll be just fine. So I am now in Stonehenge. I know first off because, hey, look, the Stonehenge panorama popped up, but also I have my location now saying Stonehenge. So we've traveled to Stonehenge. The sun is in a completely different part of the sky because even though we traveled to Stonehenge, we didn't do anything about the time. So we are now in Stonehenge at the current time in Stonehenge, which happens to be 7:30 in the evening. So that's one way of changing your location. If I go back up here to Stonehenge and let's do view from again, have that window pop up, and let's say I want to look for a place that doesn't happen to be in the list of approved places or already existing locations. We have 3 different tabs here that we can take a look at. So the first one here is just a map of the Earth with the current terminator going across the map there. And so you can just click, literally anywhere on the Earth that you want to go. Let's say you're giving a presentation and some kid says, hey, a couple summers ago, my family took a vacation to Australia. Can you show me what the stars look like? You could use the list and search for Australia, or you just click somewhere random on the map, say view from select a location, and now we're going to be taking off and flying to Australia there. Now, there is a shortcut that you can do. If you want to skip the animation and you want to instantly teleport yourself to the new location, hit spacebar. It actually pops up as you're traveling, says, hit spacebar to, I think it says, skip the animation or something. So if you want to quickly get somewhere and you don't really care about watching the flight, you'll hit spacebar. So it might not be something that you do a lot during actual shows because the audience loves flying around, kids especially. But when you're programming and setting your lessons up, spacebar is a great way, unless you really want to focus on the actual flight path that you're taking. If you just want to quickly get somewhere and set a new scene up, a new favorite up, spacebar is the way to go. You can save yourself a lot of time. So we are now in Australia. It's 4:30 in the morning. If I want to come back to my home location, a few different options. I can go, click on the location bar and say, view from Philadelphia, or I can just click that home button. And I should come back home. Or, are you going to wake up? See if Starry Night likes working with Zoom there. So your home, the home bar. Oh, look, it worked on Renderbox. All right, there we go. They caught up. So that's just the introduction to changing your location. Steve has another very quick exercise here to just kind of go through that process on your own here. So Steve, if you want to take it away, I will stop sharing. The floor is all yours.
Something that I want to point out really quickly that I've noticed through the years of doing this with Brad, and Brad just kind of did it innately, just knew to do it. If you ever see your system starting to get like laggy or it's not doing what you expect it to do, I tend to, because what's supposed to happen is your pre-flight, let me share this so everyone can see this. Your pre-flight, hold on, my computer hates me. There. Your pre-flight is supposed to be on one computer and your render box is supposed to be on a whole nother computer. And the fact that we're trying to run them both on one computer can sometimes just make them a little cantankerous. And I've noticed that one of my biggest issues that people run into, or including myself, is that I'll get laggy. I'll start to notice like exactly what Brad was noticing. The two computers don't seem to be talking as well to each other. And all I have to do is kind of click on both of them. I don't know if you guys can see these icons down here. And it kind of helps refresh it. It kind of helps the information travel between the two, and it kind of it kind of takes the kink out of the programs. And that's just a little helpful hint. If you're ever noticing that, I think sometimes also just coming off of live mode can help a little. So what I'm going to do now is let me share just this screen. For those of you who don't have the file yet, let me dump that file. Oh, thanks, Brad. Brad already put the file in there. So please follow along. When I made these files, I won't lie, I made these files years and years and years ago. So there are going to be some things that are outdated and out. Some of the words are needing updating, which I need to get around to one of these years. But as you're going through here, if you notice things like, let me share that document. If you notice, I sometimes say things like, instead of the word other, I believe that's been changed in the newer editions to view from, so I apologize for that. All right, hopefully most of you can do the first one pretty quickly because it was kind of in the example. So I'm going to run through that one pretty quickly right now. And then when we get to the next one, I'll walk you through it a little bit slower. So I'm going to switch my sharing. Okay, hopefully you guys all see pre-flight. If you don't, start screaming and I'll change things. All right, for this first one, I always like to start off by pressing the home button. It kind of cleans up anything and it makes everything, we're all starting on the same page. From there, I want you to right click on the viewing location toolbar. Now we don't have to right click on it. You can just left click on it, which is really nice. In the old days, the right click was a little more needed. And instead of using the word other, it's now view from. So I'm going to click on the word view from. And just like Brad did, all I'm going to do now is type in Stonehenge. And you have your choice. You'll see over here, there's different panorama settings. I like to pick this one, and I'm going to say view from selected location. When I do that, you notice it starts to take me off and fly through space. As Brad said, the space bar is your best friend. I tend to, when we're giving these shows, that people ask, like, do you ever let the flight actually happen? I tend to like it if there's, the audience likes to watch a flight once. After that, you don't need to keep watching all these flights that can take, it eats up a lot of the time that you could be teaching. So that gets us to Stonehenge. Hopefully everyone can do that and get us around. Now, this one is pretty fun because now you're not just locked into landing on the Earth. We can actually go to the moon. So I'm going to get us to the moon. First thing I'm going to do, because I always like to do, I like the home button, and let's go to the moon. So I'm going to click on our viewing location bar. I'm going to go to view from, and this is where you have to change things because notice right now it says view from the surface of the Earth. And so what we need to change is this Earth to moon. Now, if you click this, you'll notice there are a lot of, don't be fooled by Dr. Bradstreet and his curriculum has created a bunch of other moons. Don't be fooled by them. You have to go to the moon. Don't do any of these other, I don't rotates and stuff like that. Click on the moon. And then here under filter, I ask you to type in landing site. You'll notice that it populates all the different landing sites for you, which I think is really nice. And so I think I say go to Apollo 11 and say view from selected location. And here we are, we're going to fly to the moon. I'm just going to hit the space bar. And here we are on the moon, and I'll try and get the daytime. There you go. So on my computer, hopefully on yours too, you can see the lander hanging out. Any questions on how we did that? This is probably the number one thing you'll do while you're in the planetarium is moving around because students want to see different places. You want to take them different locations. All right, I don't see anyone raising hands or freaking out yet. I'll take that as a good sign. All right, Brad, I'm going to stop sharing.
All right. So let's take a look here. So what are the, can someone remind me of the 5 basic functions of Starry Night that I went over earlier? So want to either in chat or you can unmute yourself and chime in, or just if you know, just remember just a couple, go ahead. Just a pop quiz. I want to see if people are actually paying attention or not.
You're asking a lot, Brad.
I know. Location, yep, good. What else? Time, yep. 3 more. Display options, yeah. 2 more. Orientation. And what's the last one? It's how we get things moving. The time rate. All right, there we go, yes. All right, so what we're going to look at next is the time and the date. So on your pre-flight interface, you should see over to the left, the top left here, is very obviously the calendar. So I have, right now the current time and date is what should pop up when you have, you start Starry Night. If we want to change any of these values, I just simply click on the number like 20 there. It highlights to let me know that I've selected it. And now I have a few different ways of changing that. I can use my up and down arrow and just slowly step forward day by day. I can actually type the number in. So to go to July 11th. I could use the mouse wheel and kind of scroll the mouse wheel up and down here, or I can click and drag left or right and very quickly move through time. So typically, I will, if I know exactly the date that I want to go to, I'll just type it in and we'll go. If I, close and I just want to, move a little bit backwards or forwards, I'll use the up and down arrows. I hardly ever use the mouse wheel, honestly. It's just not very useful there. And if I want to very quickly kind of move forwards or back, forwards and backwards in time, I'll click and hold and drag the mouse. Typically, it depends on what you're trying to do. So if you're on the surface of the Earth like this, doing it with days, probably not the best of things. If I do that with minutes, though, if I click here with the minutes, then it's a way for me to quickly, get into sunset and have a very rough kind of sunset happen up on the dome there. So that's an option you have there. So all of these behave the same way. So the date, I can go for the year, move forward in the year. CE and BCE are a toggle. So it just goes, take you between the two of those. PM and AM are also a toggle. So just go quickly back and forth. So it's a really quick way of, you turn the system on, just want to quickly get into a nighttime view, click on the AM and that should move you 12 hours and get you to a nighttime sky, and you're good to go there. So, Steve, is that for enough for the next exercise? Do you think?
That should be enough, Brad.
Okay, I'll turn things back over to Steve then.
All right, I'm going to link in the chat the time and date, and then I will share my screen with the same file. Hopefully you all see that file. So work through that, take your time. The bottom part's going to be the one that takes you the most amount of the time. The first two parts really just kind of help you learn the difference between two of the step features. One's kind of more flowy and the other one's taking you in very discrete steps. But the third part of this will take a little bit of time and set up. So I'm going to give you some time for the third part. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I'll probably make something up, so I have no idea what I'm talking about.
So we just realized that the exercise we shared with you is for the time rate, so not necessarily just the time and date. We're also very close to 250 here. So go ahead and kind of work through this a little bit. And what we'll do is at the start of the next session, we'll jump right into the time flow here. And so work through this, see how much you can do on your own, and then we're here for another couple minutes, and then we'll take our 10-minute break. And then at the beginning of the next session, we'll go over this as well as going through all this stuff with time rate there. So sorry about that, but go ahead and see what you can do on your own here. And as always, we're here if you have questions. right, so we're going to take a 10-minute break here. So, go stretch, bathroom break, get a drink, whatever you want to, and we'll start up here in about, again, in about 10 minutes.